Okay, so welcome back to Riaan's Boardroom. With us today is my co-host Jason Hostens,
Hey guys.
the cancelled COO, and a very special guest, Mr. Robb Sykes, a finance executive, educator, broker, and a strategic leader with over 25 years of experience across accounting, human resources, real estate, compliance, and higher education. Geez, mate, is there anything you don't do? Rob is a former Deloitte professional, MBA, University of Arizona professor, and founder of Armstrong Owen Realty. So, beyond the business, he's deeply involved in community service, education, and nonprofit work, bringing a rare blend of financial expertise, leadership insight, and a human centered perspective to today's conversation. Welcome to the podcast, Rob. How are you?
I'm brilliant. How are you two? Nice to see you.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we're doing good, mate. Do you wanna just introduce yourself to the audience from your perspective, and let's see where we go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Robb Sykes, I'm the founder of Pivot 360 Integrative Coaching. And I did create the Agnostic End State Leader Framework. It is a bold thesis, and the leaders who will win the future are adaptive influencers who stay committed to outcomes, not locked into the legacy methods. So I'm super excited to be able to present that. So if you're a senior exec or a mid-level manager trying to create real purpose and progress instead of just more activity, this conversation is for you.
Oh, definitely. It's an interesting topic, especially when we started talking about it, because we've been talking a lot about leadership the last while and how important it is, specifically with the work that we do with continuous improvement and change management. So, yeah, I mean, let's kick it off, Jason.
Yeah, reading through that white paper, it just really hit a lot of points for me in terms of some of the encounters that I've had with leadership and even some of my own practices as a leader. And so, Rob, in one sentence, when you think about the agnostic and state leader, how do you explain that to a busy executive who, maybe he's only got 30 seconds between their next meeting?
Oh, well, and an agnostic end state leader is someone who stays relentlessly committed to the mission and desired outcome whilst remaining flexible, adaptive, and evidence driven about the methods used to achieve it. Most leaders anchor themselves, unfortunately, to systems, habits, technologies, or organizational traditions because those things create comfort and predictability. But markets don't care about our comfort.
Oh,
Customers
yeah.
don't care about our internal processes. And the leaders who win today are the ones who can pivot quickly without losing strategic direction. So what I explain it to executives, I tell them this: stop asking, how have we always done this? And start asking, what future condition are we trying to create? And what's the smartest path to get there now? The shift changes everything organizationally and culturally.
So, Rob, when you talk about the shift, what exactly do you mean? I mean, just break it down for our listeners.
So the shift would be the mindset shift. So it's very basic. Instead of taking the legacy approach or mindset of like, this is how it was done because I created it, or it was created prior to my existence here, that shift is also something that has to occur from a mindset perspective psychologically. You have to have buy-in with your human capital and your outside vendors, or which are your customers. But again, customers don't really care about our internal processes. So what are we doing to co-create these processes with them?
So that's a very very interesting point. I mean, with us working with leaders all over the world, it's the last episode Jason and I did was, someone might be a good operator in manufacturing, then they get recognized and they get moved into a leadership position, and they haven't been trained on, how to manage people, and systems, and it becomes really really interesting. So. Um, You draw the line between leaders who manage systems and leaders who navigate uncertainty. In practical terms, what does each of these leaders do differently in a typical week for you?
Thank you. System managers spend most of their week maintaining operational predictability. They monitor the workflows, the processes, approve decisions, review reports, and reduce deviation. There's value in that, don't get me wrong, but organizations need operational stability. But
Oh, yeah.
uncertainty navigators operate differently, right? They spend time identifying patterns before they become problems. They ask tougher questions, challenge assumptions, look across the silos, and assess whether current systems still align with future realities. And they're talking to people at multiple organizational levels, listening for friction points, resistance patterns, and market shifts. And again, they're influencing mindset, not just execution.
So
Mindset and culture, yeah.
And the culture, yes.
yeah, so when I think through this, one's basically keeping the machine running, and the other's really kind of rewriting it while it's moving, and
Mhm.
also trying to keep people calm through that change. You talked a little bit earlier about mindset. When they're trying to make that shift from that operational leader to that transformational leader. Um, where do you see the leaders struggling? On top of those things, where do you see leaders struggle when they try to make that shift?
Whether they admit it or not, the biggest struggle is psychological, not operational,
Oh, yeah.
right? So leaders often tie their identity, their credibility, and their worth and the authority of that system they built or inherited. So when the environment demands adaptation, it can be personal. So they hear the process must change and unconsciously interpret it as I failed. And that creates defensive leaders. And so instead of evolving, they overmanage, over
Mhm.
control, or double down on outdated methods, which certainly feels safer than ambiguity. And the second challenge I will say is influence. This is huge in
Yeah.
this model. Adaptive leadership requires guiding people without uncertainty, whilst always having immediate answers or without having those immediate answers. So they kind of take a step back, have that space, and that is sometimes uncomfortable for leaders who are trained, as we know, to equate authority with certainty. They have to have the answer. So those leaders who make the shift successfully learn how to stabilize people emotionally whilst allowing systems to evolve strategically. And that balance, that calm without rigidity, is where modern leadership credibility is built.
Man, I love the way you just said that because I mean that's if every leader that I've met in my life actually had that mindset, I probably wouldn't have a job. I'd probably have to go and drive a forklift or something. So and it's interesting to me that you say that not every person can make that leap, and
Mm.
that's what's your opinion when someone is very self-aware and they know they can't make that leap? What would they do in that case?
I I think if they're self-aware and cannot make that leap, they can. To me, a leader is an adaptive influencer. So they
Yeah.
need to find those that structure, that internal infrastructure that's going to allow them to kind of make that. If this is a conversation truly with HR, with a coach, certainly a coach might assist them with maybe navigating those pieces and stopping before talking. Listen first. Listen to hear those processes. Listen to hear the angst of maybe your human capital, those people that really need you to listen to them. And then make a declarative change sentence, outcome, whatever, with them collectively. That co creation is imperative, in my opinion.
Nice.
And what you're describing is a key component of organizational change management. I mean, listening to those stakeholders, listening to those people involved in the process, and then getting them ready for it, and kind of using your words, influencing them, helping them understand why that change is important to them and what the benefit is to them.
Aye.
So,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, you use the word end state very intentionally. So, how is end state different from a plan, a project, timeline, or even a set of KPIs or, KPRs, whatever we call it these days? OKRs. Yeah, it's all the same thing.
Yep.
I get so over it when people reinvent the wheel. It's like, especially, and I'm sorry, I'm going off on a tangent, but especially, Lean Six Sigma consultants or people or program directors or whatever. It's like all of a sudden, we want to make our mark in a business, so we're not going to call it KPIs, we're going to call it targets. It's like, okay, great,
Oh my God.
happy. It still stays the same thing. So if we don't achieve it, what are we going to do? Or if we don't have KPIs, what are we actually aiming for? So I mean, what's your opinion on that?
All right, write this down. A plan is a sequence of actions. A
Yeah.
timeline is a scheduling mechanism. KPIs are the measurement tool. So we've got
Yes.
those three components. So an end state is different because it defines the final operational condition that exists when success becomes a sustainable reality. It answers the question too, what must ultimately be true when this is working, right?
Yeah.
For example, a company may have KPIs around customer retention, but as we know or could know, the end state might be creating a business model where customer loyalty becomes self-sustaining because trust, responsiveness, and maybe excellence are embedded culturally. And another example, maybe a leadership team might track productivity metrics, but the true end state could be building a cross-functional culture capable of adapting rapidly without executive bottlenecks. So
Yeah.
end states create directional clarity. That's the bottom line. Plans and KPIs matter. Absolutely, Riaan. Absolutely. But without a clearly defined future condition,
Yeah.
organizations often optimize activity while accidentally drifting away from strategic purpose. And they have no idea it's occurred.
That's a very interesting point. I mean, Jason, I'm sure you've encountered that just as much as me.
Yeah, in project management, we call that scope creep, and
Yeah.
it's a reality that even in Lean Six Sigma you have to deal with. It's just we get excited about the process, the improvement. If it's not aligned to the strategy, then what are we doing? Um,
Mm-hmm.
That's if there is a
and
strategy. Yeah.
or yeah, right, there is one. So really, Rob, let's make it real. If you could you walk us through like a simple before and after, maybe a team that was drowning in initiatives but had no clear end state, and what changed once you helped them define it?
Oh, I have a great example. Oh, I
Yeah.
love this. So I worked with a leadership team that had nearly 20 simultaneous priority initiatives, right? We go back to that
Oh,
project
yeah.
bottleneck running across departments. And we're talking multiple departments. So it was just, oh my God. Everybody was busy, but nobody could explain what the organization was ultimately trying to become. So
Yeah.
marketing wanted growth, of course, right? And operations wanted efficiency, and HR wanted that engagement. And of course, finance wants to cut costs. But none of those efforts were strategically integrated. So once we did narratives, once we looked at this and really kind of did that audit step piece of this and kind of stepped back, we defined a single organizational end state. And here it is: becoming a scalable, cross-functional organization capable of growing without operational breakdown. Lots of words, but a true meaning of something. You now have a target, like it's there. So the clarity immediately changed the direction with the decision making. So projects didn't just support scale, or projects that didn't support scalability were paused. Their meetings became shorter, which is a win, right? We all know that.
Oh,
Less
yeah.
meetings. because the teams now understood the priorities and leaders stopped competing for resources, which they do, and they do it organically sometimes, unconsciously, and started collaborating around the shared outcome. And lastly, morale improved. I mean, no brainer. So it eliminated, bottom line, it eliminated that strategic noise and operational fragmentation.
I love that. I mean, for me, it's like I always say, let's say rugby. I love rugby. It's like, if you just, being South African, if you just take a ball and you just throw it onto the field and people just start running after it, it's like, we can't call that rugby. Yeah. So what have we done? We've created rules. We've created a measurement system, and we've created an outcome-based thing. So 40 minutes aside, we're going to see who's the winner. So I always say to people that we can't play the game if we don't know what the rules are, because otherwise, what are we doing? What are we trying to achieve? And you said it very well. It's like, we can have all these strategic initiatives, and we can have everything running well, or we can have people running all over the place, because that's another thing. I was taught, by someone that I can't mention right now, but he said to me the one day, mate, if you want people to leave you alone, grab a clipboard and just walk fast. That's it, and look miserable, because then people will leave you alone and they think that you're very, very busy. So yeah,
And look down,
so
Julia. Look
hey?
down.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
So for the exec or manager listening in the car right now, what's one question they can ask their team this week to start moving from what are we doing to what end state are we actually creating?
Okay, so ask this. If everything we're working on succeeds, what will actually be different operationally, culturally, or strategically 6 to 12 months from now? So here's this question. It forces something. It forces people to move beyond tasks and into outcomes. We're so outputting that we need outcomes, and we forget there's outcomes. So most teams can explain what they're doing, right? They can explain what they're doing, but far fewer can clearly explain what future condition they're creating. They have no idea, okay, we're going to do it. We just don't know where this is going. So the moment a team struggles to answer that question cohesively, leaders immediately discovered where misalignments exist. If they're listening, Riaan, listening, it also exposes whether the projects are strategically connected or not. And I think once teams begin thinking in future state terms, prioritization becomes easier because every initiative can be evaluated against that desired end state. And that's where clarity starts replacing that organizational noise.
And it's amazing when you can see that light bulb go on, yeah? When people start aligning and they understand what the mission is, and it's like, oh, this is what we're supposed to be doing. And you go, yeah, that's only taken 6 months to get to that point, but let's do it now. So you say adaptability and adaptation isn't just operational, it's deeply human. Why do people actually resist change, even when the logic is sound? I mean, this is a big deal for me. There's, and people associate change with taking something away, not adding something, which, is already a flawed way of thinking about it. But what's your advice on that one?
Well, I believe because most resistance is emotional before it's rational, right? It starts emotionally. So change threatens predictability and the competence, your identity, and maybe control. Every highly intelligent people, like the people that I know with high intelligence, tend to resist when they believe the change could expose their weakness. Just saying.
Of course. Oh, yeah.
Reduce their relevance or destabilize the systems they trust or even build. So leaders often assume, Riaan, that resistance means people don't understand the strategy. But in reality, many people fully understand the logic. They just don't have any emotional connection to it and haven't processed it. And it's too much uncertainty. So that's why I believe adaptive leadership is inseparable from influence. Meaning, you cannot force meaningful adaptation through spreadsheets and org charts alone, right?
No.
People need to be psychologically safe. They need clarity and trust. These are foundational elements that we know but don't implement because they can't do anything without that and move confidently forward. So the best adaptive people recognize that organizational transformation is not just operational redesign, which they try to do, right? It's emotional navigation. And they lead people through ambiguity instead of obfuscating from it, instead of saying, oh, it doesn't exist, we're good.
But I love that. I mean, for me, and I'm sure Jason, can agree. The work we do, we go into an organization, we look at what people actually do. I used to love going into meetings and just ask people, what's the purpose of this meeting? And if no one could tell me, I'd go, okay, meeting done, get out of here. You could have done this on an email or whatever. Because if you don't have an agenda or an actual mission with it, then you're just looking for people to talk to. You just want to be social. Then we can be social, but let's get the stuff done first. But
Exactly.
to your point with the emotional connection, I mean, I always think of this one example. I mean, I've got a few, but I was dealing with an organization that was really just stuck, in their own processes and the way that they do things. And I was sitting with the safety, the VP of safety, or whatever you want to call it, it's a big site. There was 1,500 people just in manufacturing on the floor. And, we started doing 5S. And I mean, 5S to me, I'm very passionate about because it changes the culture, it changes the thinking, and it's actually a very emotive, subject. It's like you don't realize it until you start working with people who's a little bit, they don't really like change. And I ended up walking past the office one day and we were doing some sort, not even the shine phase yet. And she was literally sitting on the floor crying. And I was like, oh man, what have I done? And it's like, it's not the best feeling. So, I knocked on the door. I asked if I can politely come in and everything else. And I went and sat with her on the floor and I said, look, what's going on? Is there something I should know about or whatever? And she just looked at me and she's bawling her eyes out. She said, I don't like change. And I went, yeah, neither do I, but we have to. If we want to get different results, we're going to have to do things differently. And she's like, well, I know where everything in my office is. And I said, well, what if you decide today that you're going to resign because of, 5S or whatever I've done? Would anyone else know where to find these files and folders? Because we're in the food manufacturing business. I mean, it's very highly regulated. And she looked at me and it's like that light bulb went on and she went, no. And I said, well, how can I help you to do this? And we started working together. And you wouldn't believe she ended up running most of the 5S projects across the entire site.
That's
and
amazing.
it was so inspiring, to see that.
That's the best part of what we do. I mean, when
Yeah.
when you have that resistor in a project and the thing that turns them around almost 100% of the time is making it relevant. You have to make that change relevant to what they're doing and why it's important to them and the benefit that they get from it. If you just go with a change initiative and you're not doing that communication, you're not doing that influencing, then you're going to struggle the whole way.
Oh, yeah.
And to further that, exactly, and Riaan mentioned this too, right at the beginning, the resistance is emotional before it's rational.
Yes.
So Riaan was able to talk to her about the rationality of that very calmly and pointedly. And that light bulb clicked on too again. Now she's become that influencer. Didn't even know That was in her, maybe. And this is my point too, as well. Adaptive influencers. I believe a leader is an adaptive influencer, period. End of story. Whether or not they see it immediately or they need a little coaching to find it, they're there. I believe that. Maybe that's the optimist in me. I don't know.
Oh no, I believe it. I've seen it, and I think it's you know what? It's those outliers that if you can convince them to come along for the ride, they are usually the ones that has the biggest impact. And I mean, I get goosebumps just thinking about the examples that I have, you know, in Australia and South Africa and America. And it's like, you know, you work with people and you look at them and you go, I know you. You work in South Africa in a different place, but I know exactly who you are and what you're thinking. But hey, let's deal with this, you know?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. All right. I got to chill. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, that's cool, man.
Love it. All
So,
right.
Jason, you want to take the next one?
Sure. So you talk about balcony perspective, Rob, and kind of stepping off that dance floor to see the whole system. For senior leaders that have a full calendar, what does getting to the balcony look like in like reality in practice?
Well, practically, it means deliberately creating space to observe the patterns instead of living reactively inside operational noise all day. We talk about this in leadership, both of right? All of us.
Yeah.
Operational noise. What can we do to limit that noise? So strong leaders schedule time to think, not just time to respond. This is key here in this model. It's not something we hear very often. Oh, I have to schedule time to think 100%. But again, strong leaders schedule that time, not just to respond. And the balcony perspective means asking, what dynamics keep repeating? What friction consistently shows up? And what conversations are we avoiding? So one executive I worked with realized his leadership team kept solving the same communication breakdown every quarter, every quarter, every quarter. And so from the dance floor, it looked like,
Yeah, yeah.
the isolated
Everyone loves
operation.
it.
Woo, we're having a good time here. And from the balcony, we're not dancing anymore. From the balcony, it became obvious that the real issue was siloed incentives driving competing behaviors across departments. It wasn't just isolated. So once he saw the system instead of the symptom, the intervention changed completely. So the balcony isn't about disengaging from the operations. Everybody loves to dance, right? It's about gaining enough perspective to diagnose root causes instead of repeatedly treating the symptom over and over again. So yeah, give me the balcony. I still want to dance, but I want the balcony.
I love that. I love that way of looking at it because, you know, everyone talks about, let's get into the 30,000 feet view and whatever. It's like the 30,000 views, 30,000 feet, you can't really see much. So I like the balcony view where you can just like look down and you can see all the details and, do a proper Gemba walk, which I love. Um, so, in that sense, I mean, we're talking about leadership and specifically at the executive level. I know it might make a lot of executives, and I know it makes a lot of executives very nervous when you start talking to them and, start digging in and you start talking current state and future state and, where they'd
Mm-hmm.
like to be. And then they're like, yeah, these guys down there need to change. It's like, um, yeah, maybe we start off with you, and then that'll flow down. So, um, and one thing that I've noticed over the years is ego. So you say weak leaders protect their methods, strong leaders protect the mission, and I love that.
Mm-hmm.
What are a couple of behaviors that scream, "I'm protecting my method," even if the leader doesn't realize it?
One major indicator we all can look is when leaders dismiss new ideas before genuinely evaluating them because that's not how we do things here.
Oh
right?
yeah.
We've heard that for so long. And another is over defending the legacy systems simply because they were personally involved in building them, or it just became that part that they had to kind of implement. So you also see it when leaders confuse disagreement with disloyalty.
Oh yeah.
The moment questioning a process becomes politically dangerous, ego has entered the system. Hello. Another behavior is excessive control. So leaders demanding approval on every decision because adaptation feels threatening to their authority. I mean, this is big. Again, it goes back to the psychological. Ego is huge here. So method protection usually masquerades as consistency. Let me repeat that. Method protection usually masquerades as consistency, but underneath it is often fear. And this is
Mm.
okay to have that empathetic moment here when we're talking. Fear of losing relevance, certainty, or identity. That's a valid and real fear that exists. However, mission-focused leaders behave differently. They ask, does this still serve the outcome? If the answer is no, they adapt without needing the old method to survive, for their ego to survive alongside it. So the two are squashed.
Man, I love talking to you. I've forgotten how much we can carry on for hours about this stuff. I mean,
Absolutely.
this is real life stuff. And I mean, Jason, I know you've encountered it too, mate. We've been around the block a few times.
I,
It's fun when things go right, and when you like, we used to say at the breweries, you walk out and everything's just humming, everything's quiet, everything's doing what it should be doing. It's when you walk out there and there's like steam coming out of valves and people running around like crazy that okay, maybe I shouldn't have come to work today. So yeah, it's an interesting one, specifically around egos, and I have to. I mean, my observation, and Jason, yours too, probably. Tell me if I'm wrong, but it seems like, and this might sound very just normal, but the higher up people go, the bigger the egos get. Do you agree with that, Jason?
who are you asking, me or Jason?
Sorry. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Either one.
I think, yeah, I see that the more senior a leader gets, everybody has ego. Yeah, and it's a matter of
Yeah.
how much is your ego helping you or hurting you. And if a leader is getting higher up in the organization, sometimes if they're not self-reflective, if they're not being honest with themselves, sometimes their ego is getting in the way of actually making the organization run better.
And also,
Definitely.
too, their ego could be misinterpreted for experience. They can come
yeah.
in and talk that talk. And I will give an example if we have a moment. I was on a nonprofit committee hiring the ED, the executive director. I have an HR background, as you all know, very strong, and I hear people, and an auditor. The gentleman was answering the questions we had exactly the same way, just changing some things and obfuscating some points, sitting there with a high arrogance, very high arrogance. And it wasn't so much the arrogance that I was distasteful about, and that he was sitting in that chair in an interview. He is displaying ego that was unnecessary for this. No perspective. Like, I'm looking for a change leader. I'm looking for a transformation leader, an adaptive influencer. This is a nonprofit, for God's sakes. Now, I don't need your ego, okay? I don't need your ego. I was the very first person after this gentleman left, and I said, I'm a no. And I was very declarative on that, and some people were questioning, why are you a no? And I gave them all my notes and blah, blah, blah. And I said, every single question was answered the same way. I said, sometimes we need to listen and look at people, look at their somatics. How are they responding to things? Are they twitchy?
Yeah.
What's happening with them? And I think coaches, a good coach in leadership, can look at these somatic changes in our leaders and assist them deeply and prophetically and profoundly, I think. Not prophetically, well, maybe profoundly, by saying, hey, look, I saw a shift there. What's happening right now? And that's that empathy around that you spoke about, the psychological emotion, but also that empathetic movement that maybe that coach can really be that part, that alongside with that complement for them to be that adaptive influencer. But again, if you BS Robb Sykes, I can spot it and I'm done. I'm done. done.
Okay,
I love that.
so if a leader's honest, oh, sorry, Riaan, go ahead.
No, go, Jason, go.
Well, I was just going to say, so if a leader's honest enough to say, my ego's in this, what do you think is like a small 30-day experiment that they can run with their team to loosen the grip that they have, without losing authority?
Oh, great question. So for 30 days, require yourself to ask one question before offering your own solution in the meetings. So zip it and ask that question. What are we not seeing because we're too attached to our current approach? It's a very simple question. Leader zip it and let the team respond. So when they respond, it does sound simple from us, from our perspective, but the change in leadership dynamics is immediate. It creates space, as we know, for alternative thinking and that welcomeness, right? Without diminishing authority. Still have a leader, but we're welcoming that conversation. It also reveals whether the culture has been dependent on executive validation instead of collective intelligence, which is, we've seen it, gentlemen. And another powerful exercise is assigning a trusted team member to challenge. This is a tough one. To challenge the assumptions during strategic discussions. It's not to create conflict, as we know. It's to create perspective and to abate that group think, right? Group think is seething in there somewhere. The leaders who can tolerate that constructive challenge without becoming defensive will build stronger organizations because they normalize adaptive thinking. And then authority actually...
I think that's a very, very important point. It's like, not every challenge needs retaliation. And a good example that I can think of, we used to do, or we still do, when we do a big problem-solving event and we do, like a fishbone diagram or whatever, we intentionally take the leader and we either lead him outside and go have a conversation, or we put rules in place and say, look, the leader goes last. Because over the years, the experience, the leader says, look, I think this is the problem. And, other people are like, we don't think so. Maybe, maybe not. There's a few other issues. But when it comes to the multi-voting side and, now let's look at what people really think, leader goes last. Because as soon as that leader puts a dot on something, that's where everyone's going to go. And I've seen that so repeatedly. And then we keep trying to solve the same problem. And like you say, we haven't solved the root cause. So we just keep running in circles. The definition of insanity.
And it's a definition of insanity, and groupthink is so predictable in those situations because, again, the minute, like you said, they open their mouth. Chanel, when they hire a new CEO for 90 days, they cannot talk. They have to observe all the meetings. They go to the meetings. They cannot make anything. Because they were hired, right? They were hired as that leader, right, with their qualifications, credentials, etc. But they need to, get to know the organization. But it is more powerful than that, in my opinion. It does create what we have seen in leadership, that strong leader that's adaptive, the influencer, not the one that gets the group think, but the one that is going to be that, wow, I didn't see that. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Please always feel free to let me know that. Because when we remain in curiosity, it leaves out rigidity. So remain in curiosity and the rigidity is paused.
it sounds so obvious, mate, but
It does.
it sounds so obvious, but I just want to say I've only had a few occasions where that came up and people actually followed that because as a leader, you need to make yourself vulnerable. You need to
Oh,
know how to do that. And I've only encountered a few leaders in my life that actually physically went and sat down with a group and said, "Look, I what can I do better, or what should we do better? What's the problem? Let's look at solutions." And you look at that and you go, "Wow!" And everyone talks about it afterwards. I mean, I've been in some major organizations where we actually had the CEO in a big training session, and instead of doing a big speech in front of the 400 people in the room, he went and sat down at a table and just started talking to people like a normal person. And eventually everyone got up and stood around him. And I was like, this is something different, mate. This is something that I strive to do, never mind, actually implement. So when we look at this stuff, have you got some practical next steps that we can tell people that we can follow?
practical next steps. Can you be a little bit more specific on the practical next steps? Because I can go on and on.
Yeah, I know.
for
It's
the
like
leaders, for the leaders
I know,
specific.
Jason, you've got a specific way of asking that one.
Yeah. So when you think about the kinds of leaders that like the future is going to reward, who's going to struggle the
Okay.
most?
Okay. Okay. Love this. Thank you. So the future will reward those leaders with that combined, and again, Riaan has this combined strategic clarity and the adaptive influence that I keep talking about, right? And you were able to experience that, Riaan, at that table.
Oh
Because
yeah,
of that, those people were glomming on this gentleman or gal as an influencer. So leaders who can think systematically communicate clearly during uncertainty. They truly do. And then they build trust quickly and they adjust without losing direction. And that's a thriving point. So the environment is moving too fast for rigidity. It's way too
oh yeah,
fast, right? And we all know many of this is basic. So the current leadership models are almost entirely based around hierarchy, specialization, and process preservation. Let's keep what we've got. And the leaders who will struggle most are those psychologically dependent on certainty, control, and legacy. But organizations can no longer do this. Obviously, they need leaders who can evolve systems, involve with them, without destabilizing the people, which means what you had said too as well. You've got to be a part of it's got to be this. I call it a horizontal infrastructure. That
yeah.
vertical, it's never existed with me. This horizontal piece to me is that destabilization of our human capital. And let me be clear on a few things. Technical expertise still matters, but adaptability, influence, and decision agility are becoming greater differentiators.
So
And
That's
so the future
interesting
belongs.
too.
yeah.
I mean, it's an interesting point, specifically, since COVID, where the whole working from home situation, now it's firmly implanted. People prefer to work from home than sit in office, that kind of stuff. But I find it that a lot of organizations, they put a lot more meetings in place now because that's when we do work instead of doing the work and then having a meeting to say, look, this is what I've done. Now what's the next step? And it's 5 minutes and it's over. And
Exactly.
I've often wondered. So if an organization had a critical mass of this agnostic end state leaders, what would people on the front lines actually feel that's different from a traditional command and control model?
Less suffocation. Less suffocation. So they're not going to be right. They would understand the mission and desired outcomes clearly. We're going back to simple words that we know, the clarity pieces. They're not stifled. They're allowed to feel trust and to think and to adapt and contribute instead of just simply complying. I do not want a compliant person. I want somebody that's going to walk with me during this process 100% of the time. And that the traditional, and you all know this, the traditional command and control cultures, people often feel managed transactionally, right? Measured primarily by that activity or their obedience and how they're adhering to whatever processes are in front of them without having a clue what they're doing. So in the agnostic end state culture, and I love that it's a culture, people feel connected to purpose and empowered around the outcomes. I mean, that to me is huge. And then it gives that cross-functional collaboration between departments who tend to compete with each other unnecessarily and don't know they're doing it. So the territorialism is gone. And most importantly, going back to a safety piece of this, and it's not a woo-woo, it's a truth. People feel safer raising problems early because adaptation is normalized instead of punished.
I love that. I mean, and you know what? That's also enforcing the right behaviors. It's like, if you allow someone to positively challenge you and you come back with a positive, rebuttal, it's like, that's when the magic happens. That's when, people open up and they're willing to explore things. And instead of going, look, this is the way we've always done it, this, and it's never going to change. Especially at the executive and the C-suite level. I think it's, it's a quality that's very rare. I think people are so into their job titles these days that they forget what that actually means. It's and I know that's a whole new episode of the podcast. Maybe we can do that one next time. But it's interesting when we get to that level. So, Jason, for boards and C-suites, what would you say are some warning signs they need to see and look out for? I mean, I know Rob's going to give us some of his insights, but what's some of yours?
I think for me it's a lack of curiosity. So the leaders aren't asking questions. They're not making that time to get that balcony perspective that Rob mentioned earlier. They're holed up in their office. They're dictating down to their downline leadership. They're really not embracing kind of this culture that we need to adapt. These are the changes that are happening either in our organization or in our industry. They're not focused on adapting to those changes. They're focusing on cementing their control and overseeing their operation.
I know we're probably losing a lot of executives at this point.
That's all right.
I would urge them to keep listening.
Before. It's all good.
I would urge them to keep listening because that's how things change. Rob, what's your perspective?
I'm 100% with both of you. The rigidity is something that can change. We can do anything, right? We can do anything. And again, I'm going to go back. Adaptive influencers, ladies and gentlemen, it's in you. So one warning sign is when the organization repeatedly responds to disruption by adding more layers. We've seen that, right? We've got to add something. And we're not increasing adaptability with that. And so another is when leaders spend more time defending the decisions of the past. I mean, I'm right here, Riaan and Jason. I'm right here. You're defending something in the past, but again, there's ambiguity in the defense. They're defensive in the defense. They're rigid in the defense. So they also see rigidity. We also see that rigidity in cross-functional collaboration breakdowns because departments become overly territorial, like we spoke about before, and politically protective. Like they become really protective. It's a hierarchy protection. And it's an indicator that if we are in a hierarchical mindset, that's our indicator. Because when innovation slows because of that, you cannot get through the bottlenecks. So culturally, rigidity shows up, I think, when employees stop challenging assumptions because speaking candidly feels unsafe or pointless. And again, we spoke about this prior. I think it's going to be that stable systems do matter, but in volatile environments, organizations that cannot adapt eventually become highly efficient at maintaining decline. And I've seen that all of a
I
sudden the
love that. I mean,
margins
it's
are.
when you talk about people feeling safe, it's creating. It's up to the leader to create that safe space, that safe environment.
Yes.
We're not talking about physical safety. We're not talking about carrying a 9 mil on you or whatever. We're talking
Yeah.
about acting in such a way that your people feel that they can act that way too. And Jason knows this. I'm a strong proponent of the team becomes like the leader. So if you've got a defensive team, they walk into meetings and they're all angry and they don't have answers. Go look at the leader, mate. I bet you it's exactly the same. And that to me is where a lot of issues lie, and especially when you go up the chart. I think, like you say, the bureaucracy adds to safety. I'm safe in my position. I can pay off my BMW. Everything's okay. But what's happening to the rest of the organization? What's
Hmm.
my attrition rate? Is there a lot of people leaving or not? And it's amazing how many leaders are not in touch with these, indicators. So, I
It
mean,
is.
you
Yeah.
know, to land something concrete, if you had to give leaders, or people listening at the moment, just 3 moves to make over the next quarter to start practicing the agnostic end state leadership, what would they be, Rob?
First, define the end state before approving more activity. So stop adding.
Yeah,
Define that end state first and force every initiative, meeting, and project to answer one simple question. What future condition are we actually trying to create? And I'm doing a little smirk here because to me, it's very obvious. And when I coach a leader, I want to make sure that they are very clear on this, that it's what is that future condition are we actually trying to create, right? Because clarity changes behavior immediately. And like we have coached leaders in the past, all of us, and have chatted with leaders, multiple, right? Clarity, behavior, can you communicate and let them know what's happening, right?
yeah,
Obfuscation does not work in this current environment. It may have worked in models of yore, but it does not work in any model currently. And secondly, this is interesting because it's something I love. Audit where ego is protecting outdated methods.
Hmm.
Audit where ego is protecting outdated methods. Identify one system, process, or assumption that the organization continues to defend because it feels familiar rather than strategically effective. So identify one system at least. You may just squash it. That may be something you
Yeah,
pause, right? And then
yeah,
third, create intentional balcony time. This goes back to Jason's point. Every week, balcony time is on your calendar, ladies and gentlemen. Step back from operational noise long enough to observe the patterns, the tensions that's happening on that dance floor, the resistance points, and emerging risks. Ooh, got a little too close there. Leaders who
yeah,
never leave the dance floor eventually confuse motion for vision. And to sum this up, gentlemen, those 3 shifts, future state, future state clarity, method detachment, and strategic observation, that creates the foundation for adaptive influence and resilient leadership. 100%.
Nice.
done. I love that. I mean, it's like I don't know. It's these the words of wisdom coming out of you, mate, is incredible. I mean,
Truly.
it's like I mean, you go through your whole career. I mean, you guys would know this too. You go through your whole career, and you meet, you might meet 2 or 3 people that really have an impact on the way that you operate. And I mean,
Yeah.
I can, for myself, I've got 2 people that literally changed the course of my career, and it's purely because and I know exactly where they are. They're my mentors. But, if I didn't have that, I'd probably still be carrying on my little ego trip down the road. And I don't know if anyone would be following. But, when Jason started with us, I've been working with him for like 5 years now. And we've made the conscious decision to make that space in our calendars because a wise man once said to me, "Not everyone cannot always be busy. You have to make time to either rest or to think and to take everything in." And I think, I feel these days with people sitting in front of their computers at home, that's all they do is let's see what's happening. Hey, let's quickly check Facebook. And it's all this minutia the whole time. But if you look at the outputs, you go, there's not a lot of value adding outputs that's coming out of all this work. So, it's really interesting, and I'm sure we'll have another discussion on this at some stage.
Well, I think
Jason.
and
Yep.
you also have a really good, like, what's a dangerous thing in business? Intellectual blindness.
Oh
So
yeah.
leaders that are dangerous, I think, in corporations and in organizations right now have an intellectual blindness. I'm not putting anybody down. It's just the moment leaders stop questioning assumptions, they begin
Mhm.
protecting outdated thinking instead of responding to emerging reality. So the reality is here and it's in front of you and it welcomes you to participate in it. And it goes back to Jason's point on being curious as well with that too. So yeah, I'm highly confident we're gonna see our leaders shift. And I hope this podcast has been received well because, this is just, again, no chastisement on my end when I created this model. It's to encourage and to
Yeah.
see the adaptive influencers come out of our leaders.
Well, and I think Rob, to kind of pick up a little bit, kind of bringing it back to the people that you work with. As a leader, and this is who I'm talking to right now, is two leaders. Your people know if you're the kind of leader who creates that environment or not. You work with intelligent people. So your people are aware if they feel safe bringing those things to you or not. And so you have to ask yourself, is that the kind of leader you want to be?
Yeah. And it's a simple question that begs, again, it's just, to me, when I looked at the white page, just a side note, when I looked at the white page, this is exactly what you just said. What is a simplistic way that I can be more effective? Because again, this was started in 2008. I was still running multiple ecosystems, right? And I looked at myself internally and said, what the hell can I do differently? Because I'm missing the mark on some of these things. I don't think I'm as innovative as I thought I was. What can I do to better my team and learn from them? What are they doing? So I took the blinders off and started looking at them. Who knew? Who knew, guys? And then when I created the diagnostic lead, I was never an agnostic leader. I was transformational, I thought, but never an agnostic, and certainly not an end state leader. It was uber transactional and transformational, kind of a quasi
Yeah.
functionality there. And the minute the curiosity came there, the minute I think I was an adaptive influencer, finally, that's when I saw, the change was immediate. It was absolutely wonderful seeing that. And the leaders that embrace that, the value coming to work is so much nicer. It's just, I'm here. What can I do to assist? Where are we? Oh, I'm so excited about our team, and it's a little bit of foo-foo-y kind of whatever. And again, I remained authentic in it. That's the one thing that, again, I told you guys in the beginning, I can spot BS a mile away and I'm done. Authenticity, I'm yours all day long, because I want to assist you. I'm excited about your vision. And when a leader loses their vision, they tend to lose their team. Don't lose the vision.
Definitely. No, don't lose the vision, but at least have a vision. It's like, how many places do you walk in and you go, well, guys, what's our plan for today? What's our vision? Where are we heading? And they all look at you and they go, well, I don't know. The guy that knows isn't here today, so we'll get back to you tomorrow.
Oh,
I mean, I have a question for you gentlemen.
Yeah,
If we have time, please cut me off if we don't. I believe that every leader needs a coach. And here's why. A coach is someone, again, that is alongside them. It's their complement. It's
yeah,
somebody that can be their confidant. I'll say companion in the sense of a professional companion, and their clarity maker, whatever that is. Their clarity kind of keeps them in check. Like you got that little proverbial checklist as the coach. I never go into a coaching session with a list. I'm actively engaged with my leader. I'm looking at them, I'm listening, and we're co-creating instantly.
yeah.
It is magic. You guys, and again, tell me if I'm wrong here, but have you also seen that magic when they pop, when that light bulb pops off? I know you said it, Riaan, in your prior one, but coaching isn't, and I'm not trying to like encourage or to sell coaching. It's not a selling point.
Oh no,
It's
yeah.
I have
That's,
two coaches.
that's logic.
I have two.
What do you think, Jason?
I absolutely do think coaching is good for a leader. Every leader does need to have that kind of, on one hand, a coach can be, they have a vested interest in your outcome. However, the way that they will coach you is more expansive. It's trying to take a look at the whole picture and then guiding you to where like that next step is that you need to get to in your journey. And you can always have that trusted coworker that you can go to, but a coach is that person that's always on your side and in your outcome. And they're like you were saying earlier, that trusted confidant that what you say isn't going to get through the corporate grapevine. So I think every senior leader or a leader that's even emerging and starting out on their journey needs to have some sort of mentor or coach that they can talk to and just figure out how to get to that next step. How can they be more effective? How can they be more adaptive? How can they bring their people along? How can they create a cohesive vision?
Nice. Yeah, I mean, I've had this, throughout my career and stuff like that. I still have, coaches and mentors and stuff that I follow up with because, for me, a leader is someone that's a lifetime learner. The moment you think you know everything or that you should know everything, I think is the moment that things start breaking down. And like you said, Rob, earlier, the world's moving so fast these days. We've got to be aware of what's happening and our own behaviors. And I had I've got a business partner, friend, do you want to call him that? That he once said to me, a good coach doesn't tell you what to do. He asks a lot of questions and he leads you to your own conclusions. And that to me that changed my whole perspective of what a good coach is. Whereas, I at the beginning, you need a lot of guidance. It's like the I don't know, the models that's out there. It's at the beginning you need a lot of guidance. Hey, which task should I do? When I step into that leadership position, I've had the privilege of having to start at the bottom multiple times. Washing floors and working my way up. And then you get to the point where you're like, okay, now I need help. And it's like, well, if I'm not going to ask, then how do I know where to go to? But, I've always said I'm the guy that asks the stupid questions. I'm not I'm not fussed about that because I've learned that, next to me is someone else that doesn't know either. So, and then you find these people that influence your life and they start finding a way in and they start asking you questions. So what's your goal today? What are you gonna, where are you going with this whole thing, Riaan? Why do you look so angry today? Or, why is there, I don't know, orange juice running down the road and you're not doing problem solving or, that kind of stuff. But when it comes to like one-on-ones and, you get into situations where, I mean, I've been in situations where I led people that were like 40 years older than me, they've worked at the same place for 50 years. And now I've got to manage those people. And I had to tap into other people's knowledge. Like, listen, what do I do in this situation? And then usually my better coaches were like, what do you think you should be doing in this situation? And it's like, well, that's not why I'm here, mate. I've got 5 minutes. Help me. So yeah, I think if you don't have a coach, I think you honestly need to find one. And also build rapport and build friendships out of that because when people can start feeling like they can talk to you frankly and they can say, look, hey mate, that wasn't a good idea, and they feel free to say that, I think then you're on the right track. That's my personal opinion about it. Okay, so
Well, I
Rob.
also love that you said,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
No, go for it.
I was going to say, I also love that you explained really how a good leadership coach asks those questions. That's the one thing I was going to say after Jason. I love that. Exactly. What are the questions? I'm all about that. Like, you got it inside of you, as an integrative coach, and what I've learned from my coaching background integratively is that it is that. Also, too, I mean, there is a side note to that. You've explained it, which I love. So when they hear that and saying, I'm asking a question, like, no, you're supposed to tell me. There's also that side of coaching that could exist from the consulting side. Okay, I'm going to put a different cap on right now. It's going to be the consulting cap. It's going to be you need to crack. Is that what you want right now? Or do you want me to be your coach? And I've done that before, Riaan, and it is powerful because they're I don't know. What are you going to tell me? I'm like, it's going to be blunt.
Yeah. Are you ready?
So I take the cap off, or I put the other, and I'm like, look, you boo, 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 bullet points all day long. And I don't play because of the years of experience and that they're paying me for to help them in that guidance. But then I say, look, I'm still your coach. All of this is inside of you. I want to make sure for accountability that these are the things that you are getting done. These are the things that you are processing through yourself. You. I'm a facilitator for you. But when, if someone wants me to put the consultant cap on, boy, be prepared.
Mate, I always say there's a time to ask and then there's a time to tell. And sometimes it's just the way the cookie crumbles, if you want to say it that way. So, hey Rob, thank you for joining us. And hey, to everyone listening this week, notice we're defending a method instead of defending the mission. Yeah. And as asked, ask yourself what an agnostic end-state leader would do differently. And I want to thank everyone for listening and hanging in there. I know sometimes we touch on some very touchy subjects and very sensitive material, but the more we talk about these things, the more we open it up to conversations with people in those positions. So, Rob, thank you very much. If you just want to end it off for us, have you got a message for everyone out there?
I do. Always be open to things change. I mean, this is a no-brainer, right? Everything changes, but Riaan mentioned this perfectly. Keep educating yourself. Develop yourself. Organize yourself. Strategically advise. Have these things that are constantly, because it's constantly shifting and changing. So the more things you bring into your bailiwick, into your little bag, and you have it, sometimes you need that, but you don't need it anymore. It's
Yeah.
gone. You can add and subtract, but be willing to be that curious leader and that adaptive influencer. Oh, wow. That was a good ending. Wow. Sorry.
That was great, mate. I'm glad we recorded that. Jason, have you got any final words?
Uh, Nothing that can top what Rob just covered.
Oh no,
However,
that
what
was
I will
just
say,
profound, mate.
touching on the subject of adaptive leadership, and just reinforcing this point, an effective leader, an adaptive leader, they keep learning. They keep challenging their own assumptions. They keep challenging their own egos, and that's what makes them great.
Mm-hmm.
Well said, mate. Well, thank you everyone for joining us, and thank you, Rob, for giving us so much of your time, mate. We know you're very busy. And
Certainly.
yeah, let's open up the conversation. You know, if you guys have got any comments or anything, put them down below. You know, ring the bell, subscribe, all that crap that everyone always says. But you know, if you're interested in coaching, you know, if you're interested in learning more, please reach out. And yeah, we thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Jason.
You too. Thank you all.